This session is entitled Sharing Our Work, the Artists Speak. I'm Jan Steinbright. I'm an adopted Coho from the Frog House, Nicolas in Yakutat, and I'm currently Assistant Director of Alaska Native Studies here at Sheldon Jackson College. And it's a great honor for me to be here with this assembled group of talented artists. I think the word sharing really resonated with me when I was asked to moderate this particular panel, because not only are these people accomplished in their own rights and high tech, which I'm really impressed about, but they all reflect an ancestral lineage of relatives who are committed and passionate about their work as Alaska Native artists. And I have had the great honor of knowing most of these people. Boy, I thought about that today when I was writing this and thought, I'm really getting old. I've known moms and grandmothers. And so if you'll, I just want to take a minute and honor those people that came before these artists. And then when the artists do their presentations, they will give you their own biographical information. We have about 20 to 25 minutes per artist, and if you will hold your questions until they have completed their presentations, we'll have plenty of time afterwards. Teri Rofkar attributes, and I don't know your grandmother's name, Teri. What's your grandmother's name? Eliza. She attributes many of the designs she uses currently in her basketry and her weaving to her grandmother. In fact, there were some real revelations when she looked at her grandmother's basketry designs blown up into Raven's tail design. She said, aha, I finally understand why they're called what they are. She's also the daughter of Bert and Marie Laws, who are both here today, both very accomplished artists. And there's a lot of other artists in her family. Her daughter, her sister, it goes on and on and on. Nick Galatin is the son of the well-known engraver, David Galatin. I worked with him at the Alaska Native, the Southeast Alaska Indian Cultural Center. And also, he's the nephew of Will Burkhart. And we can't see it because we asked for the large screen, but Will was the artist on both screens here at Klukwan.radical. This is the Eagle Raven screen behind the screen here. And the exterior screens were also carved by Will. Tanis S'eiltin is the daughter of Master Weaver Marie Ackerman Miller. I have the great honor of working with her at a Chilkat weaving workshop we did in Haines in '85 at Raven House. A wonderful woman and my clan sister, as is Tanis. I also knew Tanis at University of Alaska Fairbanks. She was the recipient of scholarships from the Institute of Alaska Native Arts, where I worked for many years, and she graduated from UAF in art. And Evelyn, I was so honored to know both her grandmother, Selina Peratrovich, and her mother, Delores, and I know there are many, many more artists in the family now. Selina made quite an impression on me when we did a basketry workshop at Raven House in Haines in '82. Both she and Delores came up as our instructors, and it was an incredible workshop. I also, before I introduce them individually, I would like to remind you, if you don't already know, that quite a few of us that are on the committee for the gathering of Native artists that takes place 2 days this year, one day last year, 2 days in '08, before celebration in Juneau. We're going to be meeting during this conference and planning the 2-day celebration for Native artists on June 3rd and 4th, 2008. And I see Chloe French right here, and Aldona Jonatis, and Clarissa Hudson is on the committee, and Preston Singletary, and any of you that want to join us, just tell us you'd like to help out, because we can certainly use help. Our gathering was wonderful last year, and we hope it'll be twice as good this year, because it'll be twice as long. So 20 to 25 minutes per artist. And we're going to start out with Nick because he's all hooked up. And then we will go to Tanis, Teri, and Evelyn. She's waiting for her cord. Her umbilical. Okay, Nick. Please look at it. Recipients of Percent for Art projects here for our new performing arts auditorium at the high school. And they were just notified when? Last week?
They read it in the newspaper.
They read it in the newspaper.
Check. Hi, I'm Nicolas Galatin. We only have 25 minutes, so I'm kind of going to cruise through this. I'm from Sitka, Alaska. I've worked with several artists, and I think that I've been doing this work for about 10 years as a student. I'm still a student. Maybe when I'm 60, I'll start to think about calling myself an artist. But it's too much fun exploring and doing this sort of work. So I've worked with my father, Dave Glenn. I've worked with Louis Menard, Wayne Price, Will Burkhart, Jay Miller. I guess the list kind of goes on, but those are some big figures who took me under their wing to learn customary or traditional Tlingit art. These images I'm going to share with you today are from my master's thesis exhibition titled What Have We Become? The main medium for this work was paper, and I did this down in New Zealand. So a lot of my inspiration as an artist, studying my culture and learning about my culture through the times, I guess, has come from museums and the heavy impact of museum interpretation and presentation of our culture and how our cultural objects are to survive and carry on in museums today as we perceive them. This had always been an interesting subject for me to see my culture represented through museums, and I spent a great deal of time trying to learn about the visual language in books and in institutions, I guess, down in the cellars. So it's kind of made me question a lot of things about where my culture is at today, as I know it anyways. So I was born in 1979 and was raised in and out of town, so I've got a kind of maybe a different perspective. But I think it's more common with the youth today. This is from my sketchbook. This is imagery. The lines represent pages. This was kind of the start of my book, my projects with paper. Original idea was to do a full-size book, but that worked out to be something like 60,000 pages, and time is of essence. So maybe I'll get to that one day. If technology catches up to the idea, then I could probably produce that a little bit quicker than cutting each page. This is the first draft of my work that I did. I did 2 faces cut by hand. These images contain no cultural context or visual language medium, yet the concept came from my culture being represented through institutions and books, and the power of literature and the irony of coming from an oral culture that I tend to keep finding through books. So, while I'm out abroad studying and learning about my history and who I should be, are the romantic notions of how people perceive us and assume this is how real natives live. So, also, the freedom of working as a native artist without any cultural context, no visual clues, has also been a big part of my recent work. It allows the viewer to associate with the work. Whether they're foreign or familiar to the culture, they can still make their own interpretation of this piece. This is a generic face, so I enjoy that aspect of it. Here's another version of that. These are about 2,000 pages. This is vertical, the other was horizontal. So it's kind of the process. This is getting ready to bind them. Those first two faces were cut by hand. I was getting ready to do my exhibition. I needed about 15 faces for this. This is my face here. I kind of came up with a quicker way to work. But this particular piece here has text from under Mount St. Elias and Frederica de Laguna's literature. That's very, very well done, and it's a great source.
Sorry about that, that was somebody else.
This is another image from the head-on shot of that. Also, again, working with imagery that has no visual context or clues directly associated with our historical and traditional work. So I kind of enjoy that process. I think that a lot of say contemporary work done today tend to be literal and working directly with the art form, and it's nice to break free of that. So that's what I've been doing with some of this work, but there's problems that come with doing that. When you leap too far from things, you cut yourself off. So this is the process again. This was done down in New Zealand, the same company that worked with Lord of the Rings. They do these scans for animation, 3D animation, and you can kind of see my face getting scanned on the computer in the backdrop. The imagery builds up. Didn't take very long. It hurt, but it doesn't pick up any dark colors. So there's no. Some of the eyebrows are kind of gone in the eyes, but they can patch that in later. Can you guys hear me all right? By the way, this is the process. Working process. It's not very glamorous. It amounted to months of cutting paper. I export these 3D files, and then I've got a program that'll slice them to any size. I slice them to the size of the paper, and then I've got a vinyl cutter right here hooked up to my laptop, and basically I load each page, and then cut it and stack it, and pretty soon I get, the imagery starts developing. Down here you can see the numbers of the pages and the sections that have been cut out. So here's two more versions of my face, one without any text and one with under Mount St. Elias. Working with this medium, again, like I said earlier, and working free of any cultural context or visual clues, tends to cut off people from reading this work, particularly elders who see themselves through or identify more directly with customary Tlingit forms, and this medium that I've chosen to work with is versatile enough that I can take it and apply that to this to speak with directly with people from my culture, or people that are familiar with my culture. So that's what I've done here. This is a mask I carved in that scan. This is another example, and it transfers over really well. Tommy Joseph, who's here tonight, was nice enough to let me use form from a raven mask that he had done. So that's what this is here. Will Burkhardt, my uncle, let me use a mask that he had made as well. So then just applying stuff like hair into it. This is another piece titled The Good Book. This is actually in the University of Alaska Fair ranks now in their collection. I used pages directly from a Bible and cut them, so that process was interesting as well. And use raven form, which is also part of our creation story. So kind of contrasting those two. Here's another example of the 3D file and the slicing program I use. This is actually an Indonesian mask that's sold here in theater shops, so it's kind of reappropriation of something that I guess the commercial market is taking from our culture, and I'm directly taking those forms and incorporating them right back into the contemporary art world, which is here's the final product from that. And in each page is repetitive text made in Indonesia. That's where these pieces were made. So again, an example of crossing over this, the versatility of this medium to work with, and it's kind of a, yeah, I don't know if the process is as fun as the product, but this is another photographic piece in the exhibition titled Progression with a question mark. And it's print on canvas, so I've got a robe that Marie Laws let me use the photograph here, and then up to a 1900s garb, I guess, with a Holy Bible in my hand, up to a corporate raven. So, and in each image I've got a dagger, a Bible, and a pen, so they're all different tools that have influenced our culture. Also work in jewelry. This is kind of a medium that I got started in and I still work with today. It's a lot more playful for me in this medium, and a lot of the works that I do tend to be, it's more of a sketchbook for me to work directly on the metal, so I kind of experiment and explore that. This is a silver bracelet with sections of design on. Totem pole that I worked on with Will Burkhardt, my uncle, and my brother Jared. This is actually in New York now. It's more customary work, I suppose. Image of a dance staff. Yeah, it's sitting over there now. It's a little more battered than before, but this was done for the house here. This is the screen project. I got to apprentice with my uncle on this, and my brother as well. And we're just putting up the sections now. Carving and then assembly. So it's a pretty massive project. It took 6 months or something. Some more sew work. Teri wove the top of this box for me. I've got a jade base on there. This was done 7 years ago, I suppose. I did my jewelry degree in London, England, and I had a hard time incorporating the cultural art form into my university curriculum, and they didn't know how to go about that either. It was too literal for me to take my culture's visual language into their design program, and so I worked with my next love, which was music, and this is music and jewelry. It's something I developed. Play the guitar and wear the rings. And, it's a fun piece, but it was nice to run into that program and the problems that we got, because it gave me time to reflect on the work that I'm doing, the work that's around the culture. And I ended up going down to New Zealand after that and working on a much more liberal program that was geared up towards allowing us as indigenous artists to basically create any work that we wanted to. So that's where I developed the paper faces. This was some work I did down there. Again, it was more or less reappropriation of imagery and signs that were displayed in not only this area, but probably all over, and bringing it into contemporary context. Some bronze work. Copper work. How much more time do I have? Okay, I want to go over here. I'm kind of cruising through here. This is requisite. So I take a millimeter sheet of copper and raise it with hammers. This is kind of an image of the working process working on a bracelet. I learned how to do some of this work with a Japanese artist in the UK. And the copper is set on a pitch bowl, and then the detail work is kind of finished out on that. So it's kind of a lengthy process. I probably won't be into too many more of these. I got a short attention span, so I like to jump through mediums, and if we have time, I'm going to show you guys some video. This is one design, and then kind of into sections. So another fun concept is jewelry's a playful medium for me to work with different simple ideas, I suppose. So, yeah, I think that's it. I'm going to turn these videos on real quick. This is some video work out of my last show for my master's thesis. And this particular piece is about cultural context in the institution. And it always amazes me sometimes to live or see my culture portrayed behind the podium. And this is meant to be an installation, so you'd be mad to try to watch it. It's 30 minutes long. It might put you to sleep, but it's a reading from a book written on totem poles in the 70s. And it's pretty poorly represented throughout the literature. I basically read straight through it and did something to the audio that confused me. The totem pole on the northwestern coast Indians was a signboard carved with both animal and human figures. Where was a substitute for the printed word? Something these Indians are not attempted. The totem pole showed the history of man, his clan, our family, especially any victories in a war and other favorable things that had happened. So it goes on for a while, but it was more or less meant to fill up the environment of the rest of the exhibition space with that audio, and also to have that visual aspect, I suppose. There's some more work I was doing. One of the concepts I really enjoyed and tried to use throughout this body of work was Tsuheiki Shugak Tutan. And translation for that is a song that I have used is we will again open this container of wisdom that has been left in our care. And I kind of looked at that as the freedom that artists in the past have worked with. This is before gallery owners and museums and collectors influenced what the artwork should be or what it should look like. I think that I kind of translate that as this visual work is kind of a homage to that, trying to continue that and push things. So I did two dance series on video with kind of just pushing around. This is a dancer named David Elsewhere. He's kind of a famous contemporary dancer, and he agreed to work with me on this project. So. Hey, 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 hey. a lot of his influences in dancing is, I guess it's a pulled from nature and kind of in an extreme version, and it's very very odd for people to see somebody move like this, and it's similarly, somebody might get that same feeling watching thing. I'll turn that down a bit. This is the other part of that series. This is Dan Littlefield performing to this song here. Next video is another installation piece. It's reappropriation. It's kind of the working process, and I've taken the Burke Museum's compilation that they put out, I believe in the 70s on Laserdisc, thousands of images meant to be viewed sort of frame by frame, and I don't know how fast this will play on my computer, so it's meant to viewed at this rate. And it's for me anyways, it's overwhelming to see this much material viewed at this rate. You know, it doesn't give each piece enough time, and it's also very structured in institutional or museums, you know, their order. So it's, yeah, that perspective comes to me here. Watch this all anyway. I think that's it. Any questions?
So I'm going to show you some images of my work, but also talk about my family and the people that have helped me and influenced me in my work. So to begin with, I'd like to, let's see. Well, I would like to thank Jan for being here and introducing us, and I'd also like to thank Steve Hendrickson for inviting me to participate in this program. I'm so delighted to be here. I live and work in Bellingham, Washington. I'm originally from Haines, Alaska. Spent most of my time in the desert in the interior of Alaska and in the desert in Arizona. And finally, I'm back closer to home in Bellingham, which is considered the gateway to Alaska, but it's still difficult to be here. So it's wonderful to be here, to be surrounded by all these wonderful artists and to be part of my culture again. And that's the goal for me, is to have my art bring me back home. So thank you. The first image I want to show you is a picture of my great-grandmother and my great-grandfather. And I am of the Raven moiety. I also am a member of the Coho clan. and identify with the whale house of Yakutat. These are my great-grandparents. My great-grandfather's name is Wilson Berries, and my great-grandmother's name is Mary Berries. They were born approximately in the late 1800s, maybe late 1860s, and both of them passed away in the 1930s. 1931 is when my great-grandfather passed away, and my great-grandmother passed away in 1935. My great-grandfather is a member of the Thunderbird Clan from Klukwan. The next image is of my mother, Marie Ackerman Miller. And as a child, I always worked with her. I learned how to do the traditional arts. I learned how to do skin sewing, beadwork, and worked a lot with fur, and that was pretty much her livelihood. So I was real fortunate to do, as I grew older, piecework, so she'd pay me 50 cents a moccasin lining. And so she'd keep track of it, and I probably would earn maybe $15 by the end of the week or something like that, but it was a lot of money for me. And I just want to share with you that she was a wonderful source of inspiration and support, and she was an amazing artisan who was driven to create and was dedicated to making traditional art forms such as moccasins and beaded boots, parkas as well, purses. She was not afraid to explore and do different things. And after I left home, she started to weave, and she took a 2-week course with Dorica Jackson, and then taught herself from there on how to weave the Chilkat blanket, and perfected it. She's made several blankets, and she passed away in 1995. And as I said, she was a very strong individual who gracefully accepted change, and she's been quoted as having said, "I was never torn between two cultures. I accept what is good in both." So amazing woman. So this is an installation that I did at the Sacred Circle Gallery in Seattle in 2002. And I'm just going to leave it up here for a little while I introduce my work and maybe some of the things that I think about when I make my work. And I just wanted to follow through with the experiences that I had with my mom. And when people ask me what my formal training was, I know that they're referring to Western academic training, but I always inform them that it began with my mom because she was very disciplined. She was quite the perfectionist and constantly made me do things right. And always challenged me by saying that my work was okay, but never giving me great accolades, so I'd always go back and try to do better, which was wonderful. So I worked with her making moccasins and working with fur, and ended up making, during the late 60s, making leather bikinis and selling those so I could get airfare to go to Oklahoma. So it was fun working with her. And I would say that's where my formal training began. I also received a Bachelor's of Arts from the University of Alaska in Fairbanks and a Master's of Art from the University of Arizona in Tucson. And I think I just wanted to thaw out after being in the interior for 20-some years. So this is an installation called Resisting Acts of Distillation. And it represents my experiences as a shareholder. It represents my questioning of ANCSA, the Alaska Native Land Claim Settlement Act. It also represents identity issues that are involved here, land rights, subsistence rights, and just how things have changed since the Alaska Native Land Claim Settlement Act. So it consists of approximately 2,500 glass vials that have been filled with red wine, corked and dipped in beeswax. And I've always had family helping me. It's a wonderful experience to get people together to help me because I could never do this by myself. And so other things that are in this installation are prints on rawhide, glass neon, shelves, and other vials that contain petroleum, which of course represent the reason why INCSA happened. So this is a detail of another detail of this installation. These are 14 shelves, 13 of them represent the regional corporations, and one represents my corporation, Klukwan, Inc. And on the shelves sit glass vases filled with water and vials filled with petroleum oil. And the empty hand represented here on rawhide represents the questioning of land, the use of land, the enrollment numbers that we have, how we identify, and what our benefits are as shareholders through ANCSA. So this is a real important, these are really important pieces for me. These are relief prints on rawhide, and these are deer hides that I've been able to pick up from different people in Bellingham. But the image on this piece is of the war helmet that was taken by Emmons from Dry Bay in the 1800s. Let's see, I'm jumping ahead of myself a little bit here. The helmet from, so these images are staged as warriors to protect our cultural heritage. And since I was a child, I've always been fascinated by the marvelous work of art. And the helmet for me is at once ferocious and beautiful. And it now resides in the American Museum of Natural History in New York, and was part of a collection of some 2,500 pieces that George T. Emmons sold to the museum in 1894 for $25,000. And this is an image of the helmet now. So as I said earlier, working with family is really important, and working with friends as well to do these large installations. This is an image of my brother Tim Ackerman, or Gunak Diji, and here he is holding one of the drums that he made from the rawhide print that I made, and actually he turned all of my prints into drums. And it's kind of a goal that I had, was to make these rawhide pieces into three-dimensional forms. And what's interesting was that it was important for me to make images that would connect me back to home, because it's been so long since I've been here. And Tim came to visit me during the winter and turned them all into drums and brought them back home and uses them during celebration. And this is a celebration of 2002. And then takes them to memorial parties and potlatches and to firesides and uses them constantly. So I feel like this is a form of visual repatriation, and it's really wonderful to have this piece back home, because people recognize it, they know the history, and they can associate with it. Whereas showing these pieces in the lower 48 is a little difficult to explain. And also, I would like you to note the blanket that he's wearing. This is one of the last blankets that my mother made, and it is of the double fin killer whale and the raven, which commemorates her marriage to J. Miller, who is Haida. So this is the last image of that installation, and I think it's important to share with you this neon tinna. I'm really fascinated with light. I like the way light reflects off of things. I love the transparency of the rawhide when lights are put behind it. And I enjoy working with glass. So glass in the tubes and the neon light. So when I envisioned this installation, I wanted the room to glow red. I wanted blood to be emphasized. And another thing about the test tubes is that it also represents the blood quantum identification standard that has been imposed on us since ANCSA. And I'm also concerned about those people who are unenrolled or unrecognized that haven't had a chance since 1994 to be enrolled and to benefit from ANCSA. So all these things are wrapped up in this piece, and it's so complex. But getting into it, it's really difficult to pull yourself out of it and think about the positive aspects, especially when I'm so far from home. So I like to end my installations or my pieces on a positive note. And this tina, this neon tina, does that for me. It talks about hope, it talks about our wealth as a culture, and it talks about our continuance. And it has a big presence in the installation. So this is another installation that I did. I really enjoy collaborating with other artists. And in 2005, my daughter and I, Vanessa Omar, were invited to do an exhibition at the Skagit Valley College. And it was interesting to find out that the reason why we were invited was because there was a prestigious gallery in the area that was having a show of Northwest Coast women artists, and they were featuring women of the past and women of the present. And one of the professors at the college there insisted that they also represent indigenous peoples from the area, and they refused to, so she invited us to show at the college. And it was an honor to show with her, and I really enjoyed working with my daughter. And so we decided that what would be important in this show was to honor the women in our family. And so it's a multi-ethnic family. We are Irish, Scotch, Welsh, Russian, Tlingit, Mexican, and I think that's it. So anyway, we got together, and we felt like the primary thing that would envelop all of these ideas and honor all the women in our family was to use or to employ or to honor the naming process of our matrilineal customs as Tlingit women. And so here we are honoring my great-grandmother, and we have a fabric house that covers us, and names are really important. And then we see the red tina showing up again, and it's veiled with a cloth piece that looks very much like a button blanket. And this is the picture of young Klukwan with a self-portrait behind her, and this is a painting that she did from an experience in the Wapatki ruins in the southwest. She's very different than I am. Her sensibilities, her aesthetic sensibilities are extremely different. I like to work with rawhide and dirt, things like that. And she's very feminine, so you can see that this is coming through in her work, or in this work. So we've got beautiful fabric. This is a painting that she did, and the names are iridescent on a red wall, and they represent her Mexican heritage. And these are the names: Ovella, Rafaelita, Ruby, Florine, which is Irish, and then I don't remember what the last name is. And then on the left side of this painting that she did are the names of the Tlingit women in our family. My great-grandmother, and I don't know her Tlingit name, Daisy or S'eiltin, the woman that my grandmother that I'm named after, and then our names. And this is her painting. This is another self-portrait. Vanessa means butterfly, and she's honoring the fact that she is raven as well. So she's divided her image into a raven and then a butterfly, and then she's placed herself in front of the mountains in Haines, because that's where we're from. And then this is another view. This is a a better view, I think, it'll give you a good idea of what the installation consisted of. Again, the fabric represents the house, and we used organza and put lights behind them. And there's a silk screen banner image of my great-grandmother, Mary Berries, and my great-grandfather, William Berries. And then included in this is a blue neon wave symbol, which my mother said is an ancient migratory Coho clan symbol. And actually there are 3 connecting waves, but I cut it down for this neon piece. And this is an image of my great-grandmother again. Let's see, I had some. And she, as I said before, she's central to this exhibit. And at a young age, she fell in love with my great-grandfather who traversed glaciers, rivers, and mountains to trade goods with Yakutat folks. Later, she eloped with him to Klukwan and spent the rest of her life there. And when I come across my cousins or people that we think we're related with, we always say, "Are you related to that woman who eloped?" And, and we're so proud of her because she was so radical for her time. And my mother says that she was a very strong woman. And her grandfather rather was real soft-spoken and a very gentle person. And so Wilson Berries was a composer of clan songs as well, and was a caretaker of the Thunderbird Clan house in Klukwan. And as times changed, he made a living by selling wood to the military base, Fort Seward and Haines. And as the both of them got older and were not able to live that lifestyle anymore, they moved to Juneau and sold items to the tourist industry, such as small totem poles and moccasins. And that's how they made a living. So this is a detailed shot of some of the work, or some of the pieces in this installation. This is a glass bowl that was made in Italy, and it represents food and how important food is to our culture, and how the sharing of our food during potlatches is also very important, and how all that is tied in with name giving and the commemoration of names, and the honoring of those people who passed on. It also represents the fire bowls. And inside this bowl is water and glass beads that represent salmon eggs. And then this is another detailed shot of the piece. And then this is the final shot of this piece. I just wanted to show you again the organza ceiling and let you know how important it is for me to work with these fabrics that were very much influenced by my daughter. But I really enjoy the reflective quality of this work. Okay, and I don't know how much time I have.
Yes, hear me okay? All right. Can you hear me?
I don't think the mic's on.
Boy, it's tricky. I gotta get the mic close, and I still have to be able to reach my computer. All right, can you hear me now? Oh, thanks, you guys. Wow, technology, isn't it wonderful? Yeah, my name is Teri Rofkar, and I am Tlingit, the Phaeton, Jay's Dog. I'm a raven from the snail house. And Goose Cheese for letting me participate in this. I have never done a PowerPoint presentation before. and all my technicians are out of town, so bear with me on this. I think we'll get through it. So thank you very much. And I do need to recognize my mom and dad, because, you know, I guess one of the things that I probably preach about the most, anyway, one of the things I preach about the most is you have to have the art around if you're going to, you know, have it alive. It's like a language. If you don't use it, if you aren't seeing it every day, if it isn't at work, if you don't have it at school, well, you know, it's just not really going to be alive in your life. So because of my mom and dad, they're both really good artists. Art has been alive in my life. And, you know, I thought I was pretty progressive, but after watching these two ahead of me, oh my gosh. Am I frumpy and traditional? So, yeah, Tlingit art. And thank you. Wow, I won't yell at it now. The Tlingit art that I've encountered, whether it's museums or pieces that are, you know, here in town or some even the contemporary things, it has an intellect to it, and there's a wit that's there. And you know, you either get it or you don't, and it doesn't matter. The art is good even if you don't get it, but if you do get it, it adds such a depth to the pieces. And you know, the art reflects this dynamic place we live in, but it has a deeper, you know, it speaks to maybe a spiritual relationship. It speaks to sometimes more complex philosophies. And I think some of these philosophies and some of these kind of connections have been lost over time or interpretation. And these are for your protection, so I don't get long-winded. 20 minutes is really tough. I know that during this conference, the lost language and the language coming back has really been a big part of the conversation. I don't have any real knowledge of the language at all. And I think that that's a handicap, certainly. I do have some pieces that really add insight. I think when I think about the language, one of the things that comes to my mind, shaman objects. Shamanism is a connection. It was a knowledge or it was something, an understanding we had in the past. There were certain people that knew those, held that knowledge and interpreted it for us in cultural contents. But one of the things that I encounter in museums is something called one of the tools of the trade. It was a shaman's bundle. It was just a bundle of sticks kind of wrapped up informally. It was something that the shaman would have. Perhaps an animal presented itself, or maybe it was a vision quest. But within that bundle was the tongue of that animal that allowed it to have that more intimate relationship, perhaps help it with the strength of climbing or intuition or, you know, something attributed to that animal. And I think, you know, how often today I feel some of the interpretation that we don't have because we don't have language. I think, you know, have we not lost our tongue? Wasn't it taken away from us? And it's that same kind of imagery that I think makes it hard. And as the language starts to become alive again and really being actively pursued, the challenge is for the artists. Now we need to keep up with that language, the nuances, the wit, the intellect is starting to come back in those kind of venues. The art needs to keep pace. So we'll try to do that in these with the quality. So the only other one that I want to point out before I start the slideshow is because I don't have that knowledge of the language, there are a few designs that add insight. And I think one of my favorites, and I have several, but this is kind of the easiest one to do. And it's a drop. It's a geometric pattern. I am all about the geometric, as you'll see. And it's kind of a little diamond with another diamond and another diamond. And I think it's kind of translated as a drop of water. And then in parentheses in some of the text, you'll see Tlingit meaning is more complex. That's pretty much what it says. But I'll paraphrase it here, but what I understood was that it's like the smallest drip on a calm body of water creates a ripple that reaches to the furthest shores. It's a little more complex. So, anyway, we'll go ahead and, I do have a slideshow. I think the pieces hopefully will just speak for themselves. I've been weaving for a few years. Gosh, I can't believe it's this long, but I don't do that many pieces. I probably average about 25 pieces in an entire year, and I weave full time. That said, when you've been doing it for 20 years, it's adding up. So some of my first baskets were pine needle baskets. I didn't do very good harvesting raw materials, so I had to work with materials that were purchased. So you have a little cedar rose on top. It's wooden. They're coiled work, but they really taught me a lot about balance within a piece, from the bottom and how you integrate that lid, and movement within a piece. I still make them. Yeah, I think galleries know me better for my pine needle baskets than anything else. This was the first robe that I undertook by myself. It's the red tide robe. Teresa Moses has it on here, but it's all about paralytic shellfish poisoning. And I will not go into the stories behind these, but suffice, they do have stories. That one belongs to my son, Paul. Oops, it kind of went away on me, but there you go. These are a couple of, small baskets for the tourist trade. Spruce root, cedar bark. Some of the functional pieces, canoe bailers and cedar mats. I found these cedar mats are a gift for me now that I'm working with the mountain goat wool. If you put these cedar mats between your mountain goat wool in a big bent wood box, it takes the smell away. Gathering Traditions was the next robe I did. This one was a piece that I did for the Alaska Native Heritage Center. And when I got the commission, I flew up there and I met with every single tribal group that was recognized within the state. And they gave me the patterns to put in the robe. It's hung flat like this, but it does have Athabascan and Haida, Inupiat, Tsimshian, Alutiiq. Do you see the blue lines? There's blue lines around there. Actually, it's the Yukon and the Tanana, the Kuskokwim and the Copper. Because, isn't it the land that's implied that ties us all together as a people? We're all individuals, but the land connects us. I always think of my robes as baskets. This one always looks better around someone. When I got images from the Inupiat and the Yupik, they both chose geometric patterns that were part of parka trim. So that's why they're at the bottom of the robe there. And the Athabascan people, they had some beautiful porcupine quill work on their moose hide tunics. And it came down in a V in the front. And so that's what you see on the front of this robe. Back to baskets for the tourists. I'm always looking for the perfect bottom. There's some really nice ones down there. The next robe I undertook was the Lituya Bay Robe, and this one was very personal. It had to do with my lineage as Dakpengtan, and we were part of the Coho group. Grandma always said, those are your folks. Same clan group. We just, had gone by another name, so we're very closely related. Lituya Bay is one of our areas where we used to live. So this one has images of fault lines, breakers, and tides. There are some ships down there, the Buso and the Astrolabe. It was a treat, and it belongs to my daughter, Erin. So the robes in the background, one is the earthquake robe, which we'll look at later, and the one on the right belongs to my sister. She's a Chilkat weaver. She lives in Anchorage, Shelley Laws. So she's my role model for spinning. My spinning's getting better. This one's just a bit humorous. It's not supposed to be, but it really is. I did receive a USA Fellow this last December. It was a huge, huge thing. It was so exciting. And I guess for me, what was really exciting about it is, mine is a very traditional art form. It hasn't changed for thousands of years. Or has it? it's evolved, but it's still twining, it's still telling the stories. It told the stories, thousands of years ago, and it's telling the stories today. So it's the Lituya Bay Robe, and I'm at the Lincoln Center. If we could back up a little bit in this image, in front of me is a 150-foot by 225-foot window. Manhattan's in the background, and there was a full moon. So I experienced it, but I haven't actually got to see it. Back to the tourist baskets. Here we are with some with blown glass beads on the knobs. Makes it really nice. It's sort of contemporary. This is as far as I get as contemporary, you guys. I wrote neon down. I think I need to try to create a neon. I thought I was really stepping out there with these blown glass beads. Oh dear. One of them has a beautiful killer whale by Teri Rofkar out of Ketchikan. Yeah, beads are so popular, and any of those ravens, they're powerless over those sparkly things. So I put them at the tops of the baskets. This is a large cooking basket that I did. It's actually at the the Anchorage Museum now, but it did take third place in the Alaska Street Art Show. So what a great venue for artists coming up to really kind of get their work out there in a context of locals. I mean, it's a much more risky thing to do, and it's worthwhile. Yeah. Sort of just the old and the new. This big broken basket was my mentor that I used when I did it. I changed it up a bit, but basically she taught me a lot. She had some tricks in doing the bottom. This is the next robe I did. It's the herring robe, really appropriate for this time of year as the eagles gather and the herring are still deep. But it is at the Sitka High School. It was a percentage for the arts. Here it's worn by Cassandra Pook. She graduated in it this year. It is on display as a permanent exhibit, but it comes down for any of the kids who want to graduate in it. This is the spawn, and I tried to get a close-up shot of the shoulder, but I had, while I wove it in a public venue, I had piles of beads, and every time someone would come through, I'd say, so, what do you think? Does this look like the right color, the right look of spawn, herring spawn? Oh, it's a little old, don't you think? Doesn't it have a yellow color to it? I like the newer one like this. This is the one. So what I did was I beaded it over the images, just like when you see that spawn on the rocks, and also the beads hang and they're in the tassels, just like that herring egg says it clings to the seaweed along the shores. This was inspired by the kids. I did weave on site for 2 different months of the year, and they talked me into this great school of silver herring swimming through the robe. It was a good move on their part. Oh, it was really kind of contemporary, don't you think? Jan Steinbright, he graduated in it. More baskets. They are so much fun. This has a lot of maidenhair ferns with the spruce roots, the telescoping baskets. These were those little nesting baskets. And there were a lot of nesting baskets. The bonus is you get to make 2 and you only get to see 1. So this one ended up in the NMAI, National Museum of the American Indian. I did do a drinking cup for a trip I took down the Alsac River. It was the plain cover, the outside. And then on the inside, it's got a lot of the maidenhair fern and grass. Strength, and it's just so beautiful. And it works really good. I use it a lot. Another robe. This is the beginning of the earthquake robe. This robe was to commemorate the 1964 earthquake. I was actually in Anchorage when that hit, and 9.2, but more importantly for a kid that was 8, it was 5 minutes long. That was forever. So this is the robe once it was finished, and I'm actually standing on Earthquake Park. I don't have the image, but it really did get to dance on the 40th anniversary of that earthquake. I have a dear friend who is really close, and her brothers are still right there. They never did find them. And just like about 1.5 miles away from Earthquake Park, where her brothers are, is the present Anchorage Airport. And that's where this robe is. Some of the images when I do the robes, do you see the offset? You know, one side goes up and the other side comes down. I literally took a map of Prince William Sound and the Kenai Peninsula, and this is to scale in the direction. The Kenai Peninsula went up and Prince William Sound came down, and that's about the amount that it shifted. The bottom pattern is a wave pattern. I have red and yellow woven in. In the corner there, you can see that fuel tank on fire. Now that one is in Valdez, but both Valdez and Seward were devastated by the fires. Just like here, the fuel tanks were on the water for delivery. And when that earthquake hit, 5 minutes of metal wrenching, that fuel all caught on fire. And I've had some people actually personally describe it, but when the tsunami hits, you know, the water recedes. Well, all of that burning fuel receded and it came back on top of the tidal wave, you know, when it hit. So I have the red and the yellow running through it. I don't know if you can see it underneath of the robe border there at the bottom is the image of those railroad tracks. That happened in a lot of places. Sometimes you just need a basket. Only I got some big boletes that year, and I need a bigger mushroom basket. This was a great yin and yang. I did a child's robe after I had done that earthquake robe, which was so heavy, and really a lot of, it was just a powerful piece. To do a colorful, small, fun robe. This was Hinchinbrook Island robe. I used images from a spruce root trip that we had taken out, taking the EAC women out. The sandhill cranes were flying over as we went. That's that border that you see. And boy, are they noisy. So, and it is at the Alarca Cultural Center in Cordova. I wove some awards. The governor's awards are always artwork. As I was weaving them, one of the tourists came through and said, do they know what they have? I said, you know, they're Alaskan, they do. Of course, I'm usually pretty good about ethnographically impacting anything before I send it off, especially with berries. I think that center one went to the NMAI. Somebody called me about those berry stains. I said, they'll fade, unless you pick more berries in them. This is a big cedar berry basket. This one's in Ketchikan at the Visitors Center. They have a wonderful collection there. I think this is, yeah, a beautiful cedar cape beside it there. So, yeah, it's got a great collection of work. Another little tobacco box. These are a treat in that they have a real solid, technically they're quite a challenge. So they're very small and insignificant, but as far as weaving them, the inside is just off the hook design work. And then you cover it up with a plain outside, so. My next robe, the Ice Walker robe. I think one of the things I wanted to say was, you know, there's so much that goes into a robe before you get to start. The Ice Walker definitely began with color. While the weaving was very traditional, I use non-traditional colors to help tell the story. But there's the leg spinning, the weft spinning, the dyeing, the design layout. And it's one of those ones that's has some chilkat elements and raven's tail elements. It was huge, it really is. And it also has the fringe that has that chilkat look to it. The Swift robe is in the Peabody Museum at Harvard, and it's very similar in style to this, a solid weave with that chilkat fringe at the bottom. So it gives you an idea of the coloring kind of piece it turned out to be. And it's permanently at the Museum of the North in Fairbanks. And it is trimmed with polar bear and sea otter, because it is all about polar bears. Rattle top baskets. Did we get back to the tourist trade again? Dance aprons. Sometimes a tourist can afford one of these. This is one I did. It's a tribute to Emily Schuster. She's passed away now, but she's a Maori weaver. Her and Kath Brown came up many years ago. The kind of geometric weaving that we do without a loom, it's just a frame and it hangs loose. It's twined like the basketry. It's very similar to some work that's done by the Maori people down in New Zealand. In fact, they leg spin just as we do, the warp elements and some of their wool. This one's actually in the University of Pennsylvania Museum. This is a kugena, and it is done in the style of the sea otter fur weaving. It's raven's tail weaving, but every third warp that hangs down is a piece of very thinly cut sea otter. So we're looking at the front of it here. You weave over it just like it was a piece of wool, only it's a much grumpier piece of wool. This is the back of it, and you really do have to pick. You can see on the one side of the detail shot there that the fur gets completely caught up, and I really wish I didn't know that there were 300,000 hairs to the inch, but there are. This is Ed with his kugena on. He wore it at his graduation from college. He's from the Box House, and his degree was in music. I put a geometric pattern in there. I thought it was going to be just a bit more subtle, but it's not. Piano keys, yeah. Part of his story. A teacup for Eliza. This one's for my grandma. She was born here in the 1800s, and she used to weave teacups. They're watertight, you know. You really could have a tea party. I did do the little footed rim, the rim on the bottom of the saucer so it stuck up just like a porcelain one, and then I did the foot on the cup as well. Glacier robe, this one I did last year. Global warming, definitely a legend of our times. So again, non-traditional colors, but very much a traditional layout, bear tracks. I did add a lot of extra light blue elements. I wanted it to look like water flowing off of the glaciers as they melt. So there's just a few extra of that. This is one that, actually the red tide robe and this ermine robe are both on display out at the Southeast Indian Cultural Center. And I'll be there, tomorrow pretty much all day. And I don't think we're there open on Sunday, but Monday through Friday we're there. Tommy, Joseph, and I, Charlie Skolka's in the Silver Room, so come on out, check it out. I've only got 3 kids, yippee! So I got their robes done. Yeah, I was just putting the fur on that one, so this one's done. The picture, the black and white, is my great-grandmother, Bellingham. It was taken in Huna, I think probably in the 1930s. And the other one is my granddaughter, Violet Soleil. Yep, and she is preparing spruce roots there. I'm not quite sure what she's preparing them for, but they're definitely getting worked over. So I don't know where she got the idea of putting them in her mouth. But I guess the one thing that I want to say is definitely pass it on. The traditional arts, I think there's that semantic of traditional versus contemporary, and mine could be considered contemporary. I am alive, but clearly it's not very modern. But tradition, it's survived for so many thousands a year. And I think it's one of those constants in life. We've all said it. What's the one thing we can count on other than taxes? It's change. And that's the one thing that the traditional arts do, is they do change. They evolve. And be sure and share them and make them available and just actively be involved in them. Yeah, that's really important. So kind of I bypassed my own age group and I just chase around with the kids. In November, it was Native Heritage Month. So this was a time for kids publication that came out. And it's all about spruce roots and going out by plane or boat or helicopter. It's geared towards kindergartners and first graders, but that's kind of where we got to go. So I realize that I'm kind of passing through the art, but the art's going to keep going a lot longer than me. So thanks, you guys.
Thank you. I was invited here to speak about my art, and I don't think I can jump right into talking about my art. And first I have to talk about my mother and my grandmother, because they're my mentors and my teachers and my inspiration. My grandmother, Selina Peratrovich, was she was the first native basket maker to teach in the university level, and she helped establish teaching in the villages. So she would go and teach all around Alaska, and she received a governor's award for her work in preserving the arts. And my mother, who, when I was growing up, was the accountant for the local hospital, and she worked there for 25 years. And when she was relatively young, in her 40s, she was able to retire. And by that time, my grandmother was teaching in the university settings, and so she would go and help my grandmother after she retired from her accounting position, and help my grandmother teach the weaving. So they both have dedicated their lives to continuing the traditional arts, and my mother was awarded an honorary doctorate with the University of Alaska, and recently has had all kinds of wonderful fun receiving awards, and we get to have fun with her. So there she is, working with Cheryl, Samuel, and Ernestine Blessing Handlin. They were at that time weaving the first raven's tail robe in 300 years. It was an exciting venture. She went down to Cheryl to learn more about the Nahim weave, and Cheryl was just in the middle of researching this raven's tail, this old style, and she said, let's try this. I can't write about it unless I really have hands-on knowledge of weaving it. So she pulled these Nahim weavers out of their Nahim studies and set them on this robe. So in her wonderful book, The Raven's Tail, she has this picture of her helpers. This is my my mother, with all of her granddaughters, all 5 of them, and they're posing for a picture in Washington, D.C. at the time when she was receiving the Lifetime Achievement Award from the National Endowment of the Arts. And, you can see we had lots of fun. And every one of her granddaughters does weave, and I'm just from a weaving family, and we're just keeping it going. And there she is receiving her National Endowment of the Arts. So, like I said, it's great fun to be part of this family. You get to go have lunch and dinner at the Librarian Congress of the Library of Congress. So I used to tell my kids, mind your manners. You might be invited to the White House, right? And I remembered that when we were all sitting there at the Library of Congress with my children. And it's like, okay, I'm glad I taught them some manners. We're supposed to be talking about the art and that we're busy doing, and I just recently finished the tunic, but actually when I think about it, it's been about 1.5 years since I finished the tunic, and it now is at the Vancouver Museum, part of the Totems to Turquoise show, and I'm pretty happy there next to a completed tunic. That took 2.5 years. The tunic took 2.5 years. My second robe took 2.5 years. My first robe took 2.5 years. I don't have a lot of smaller things, but the Nahim weave is a weave that is a challenge every day. The geometric patterns is a joyful weave. It's sensuous. It feels good to your hands. It's joyful. You've worked out the math, and it's just a wonderful, wonderful weave. And I enjoy it. But the Nahim weave, all of the challenges, it's never boring. But you really do have to have the passion of the art to keep it going as many years as it takes to complete a project like that. This is the beginning, and I started around spring of 2003, and there I am. The reason why I chose this particular design, which is a design that you find, it's a design that has been done many times and in various variations, but the person who commissioned me to do this tunic is a wonderful person. He's just a wonderful supporter of the arts. I think we all need really good collectors, people who believe in you and share their work with museums. And my collector is just a wonderful fellow. And when he commissioned me to do the tunic, I didn't want the ghost faces upside down because we don't really know the complete meaning of the upside down ghost faces, but my mother, through her talking to elders in the past, has felt like they possibly may mean obligations that have not been met because they're upside down. A lot of figures that are upside down often mean that. And I did not want to find a design that had the ghost face upside down because Joe is just so wonderful, a great supporter of mine. So I found a design with the ghost face up, and it was in the Calgary Museum, Glenbow, and I went there and researched. I was able to take a lot of good photographs and count and all that, and so here it's at the start. And my daughter, Carrie Ann, is a weaver of the Nahim weave, and she's faster than I am. She's wonderful, and what a wonderful spirit she has, and it's great when we can get together and weave together. And so in this picture, I'm in the front, and she's at the back, and we're just having fun. And again, the ghost face is up front, facing up and not down. And there I am a little further along. And the story of this is I'm demonstrating at the Museum of the American Indian, the new museum there in Washington, D.C., demonstrating during. I received, in 2000, I received the Artist in Residence Fellowship through the Smithsonian, like Teri and recently Clarissa. And but in 2000, they were transferring their collection to Suitland, Maryland. So I got to go to the museums in New York and Philadelphia and Boston and New York, but not there. I didn't get to study their collection. So in the 2005, I got a call and they said, "Would you like to come back? You can study our collection now." So actually, I received that fellowship, but I got to go back east twice, so it was great. And so I was able to study their collection, and at that same time, I demonstrated at the new museum, and it was wonderful. But the thing is that I'm weaving the back because it's simple. You don't have to think too much, So. But my tension is different than my daughter's, and so when I got back home, we had to take it back out, and my daughter stepped in again. There we are in New Zealand, and I brought my tunic and had a wonderful time weaving with the Maori weavers, and Emily had passed by that time, but I got to meet many of the weavers, and I was part of a panel when we talked about being part of a weaving family, And it was just amazing to hear the Maori weaving, the story of being part of weaving family. And Emily's daughter was there, and it was just wonderful to listen to their story. And every single one of us cried. It's amazing when you talk about your gratitude to your ancestors and the gratitude to your grandmother and your mother and your aunties. It's just, it's very emotional to have this gift passed to us. And so it was just the most wonderful experience with those generous, kind, great people, the Maoris. In progress. It's growing. And again, here's, we were at the Taka Museum with Maori weavers. And Holly, my sister Holly was there. And oh, she was just so generous. She brought gifts. She just thinks things that I would never think of. She brought so many gifts, and she gifted people with materials, and she shared techniques. And thank goodness for Holly. They liked us so much. They liked Holly so much, they liked us both. And out of that, I was invited to be part of the Manawa Pacific Heartbeat exhibit at the Spirit Wrestler Gallery in Vancouver, and was happily tucked in this picture. I'm happily tucked in between my cousin Isabel Rourke and Preston Singletary, and you'll see some familiar faces there. It was great to be part of such amazing artists. And there I am, sometime a couple months ago at the Totems to Turquoise exhibit, and what an experience to have. They made huge silk banners out of images of pieces from that art, and my first row was one of the pieces that they created this big banner, and it's your mistakes 100 times over. But it was my first row, right? But there I am with that huge image. I was able to go to Pau, France this last June, and I'm not a dancer, I'm a weaver. And in fact, there's a painting, a postcard that you can go into gift shops and find an image of me that a friend of mine painted, and the title of the postcard is Shy Dancer. But in Pau, we had to wear both hats. We were demonstrating weaving, and they were like, "Come on, you're getting on stage. You're going to dance too." So I experienced dancing there on the stage, and one of the dancers was wearing a apron that I wove that combines the Northwest Coast or the Raven's Tail techniques with the Naheen weaving techniques, and this was an apron that I traded for a button robe, because in our culture, your aunties and someone else is to do your button robe. You can't do your own button robe. And so I traded the lady who made the button robe for me a weaving, and so it was wonderful. I get wonderful art from my weaving. I can't keep my weaving. I'm not rich enough, but I do trade. And Michael gifted me with a bracelet for teaching her a bit of the Raven's Tail, and so it's wonderful that I get other people's art and for some of the weavings that I do. So this lady is dancing in Pau, the apron that I traded for a button robe. And this is in New York. Chief Edenshaw is wearing the first robe that I did, and it was wonderful for me to see a robe that is a chief's regalia piece to be worn with and by a chief. So, and it's wonderful to see today the weavings again appreciated like they were in the past. Here's a photograph of my nephew, Don Varnell, and when you wear these woven things, they give you strength, and I think the early shaman wore them to give themselves strength to heal, and this is, Don was unveiling the totem pole that is there on the side there, and it's a wonderful, unique, beautifully done pole, and we're real proud of Don for going on and doing such wonderful work, like he's part of our family. And he's wearing an apron that my mother wove, and that is giving him power. And he did a wonderful presentation. We were like, I never heard Don speak in public, and I'm like, what's he going to say? But oh my gosh, he was just, we were very proud of him for his what he said and how he presented himself in his art. And the robe and the weavings can give people strength. This is my very first Raven's Tail project. My very first little one, it was a 2-day, 2-inch by 2-inch pouch that I did under a 2-day workshop at the Seattle Art Museum with Cheryl Samuel. And after that 2-inch by 2-inch, I went home and did, throughout that winter, did a Raven's Tail edge to a button robe. I had been inspired by visiting the University of Pennsylvania and seeing photographs of the Nahin surrounded weaving with the button robe, and so I did that. And I don't think it's been done again. I think that's a piece that, it was easy though, do it. No, it wasn't easy. But I think a lot of times people take classes and they don't gain the confidence to do big things. I'm really glad I was pushed into this big project, because then I had the confidence to do the larger projects. And so you really have to push yourself personally to get going. And I got this is a Raven's Tail curved style apron that I did with, initially my mother helped me, and it was not easy, and I can't really go into technically why it's not easy, but the weavers here will know why it was technically very difficult to do, and no one had done it at the time. Cheryl was handing out things, kind of instructions that never went further than just the outline shape of something like this, and so my mother and I really got our heads together and figured it out, and then someone liked it and they commissioned me to do another, and I was like, oh well, okay. But it was really difficult. My mother was off somewhere, like she always is, and I couldn't get a hold of her when it came time. Now, how did we do the curve, right? So it came in a dream. I relaxed, and when I woke up, okay. And so I did a second, and then I did a third, and the third was that I was like, okay, I'm going on to Nahin weaving. And that's my first robe, and it was inspired, and it's a replica of a robe that's the Museum of Natural History in New York, and right now it's in Vancouver. And it's just an amazing, not my robe, the original robe that I replicated is there also, and it's an amazing robe, and it was one of my teachers. Cheryl Samuel and Delores Churchill, my mother, were important teachers of mine. And I really feel like the original robe that this was woven from was also one of my teachers, because the designer that designed that was so logical and so wonderful. It was just amazing to do, and it was a great journey in doing it. There's my second robe, which is very similar. A collector asked, when they saw that I was doing that, I was demonstrating at the University of Washington at the Burke Museum, and the collector came and said, we want one just like that. well, after working 2.5 years, it's like, I don't want to do it again. But she had a really convincing argument. She was Tlingit, and she came up with the fact that she was part of the whale house, and she showed me things about her family, and so together we came up with unique elements about this robe that made it totally different for me, and so I did do this second robe. There's my daughter Carrie-Ann again, and she's wearing bear's ears that she wove. I'm very proud of her. She between her undergraduate and her graduate program, she spent a year with me to learn the traditional weaving. And then she graduated with a Master's of Education from Harvard University. And during the reception for the Native people that graduated from Harvard, she wore her raven's tail robe that she had been weaving the year-long time that she was learning or gaining her Master's of Education. She was weaving this commissioned raven's tail robe. And so that last week, just days before the graduation proceedings, she finished up that last one. So it was an emotional week for her, because it's very emotional to take a robe off of the loom. And I was very proud of her, and I was able to stand up and tell the people how proud I am that she graduated from Harvard University with a Master's of Education, but she also finished a traditional chief's robe, and that was almost as wonderful an achievement as that. And she's continued on with the Nahin weaving, and my other daughter, who was modeling the the raven's tail edge, she's also weaving raven's tail now. So I'm very, very happy about my passing on to my children. But I also want to dedicate myself and my time to passing on to anybody who is interested in this wonderful complex technique, because it is complex and there aren't that many people who are weaving it, and we don't want any of our traditional arts to die and stop being. And so this is a photo of my class at the Totem Heritage Center, which I've been honored to be an instructor in the past, so, and hopefully in the future. So anyway, I started with a picture of my mother and my grandmother weaving and teaching, and I think that, like Teri finished with her talk, that it's just so important to continue our traditions and to share our knowledge, because that's how we constantly change our traditions and they stay alive. Thank you.
Well, this has been an incredible journey this afternoon. Again, I'd like to thank Nick, Teri, Evelyn, and Tanis for being panelists. We will take about 5 or 10 minutes of questions. I've been asked by our media people, if you ask a question, that I repeat it. Is that correct? So that they can get it. They're doing a DVD of all of the proceedings of the clan conference, and this is partly for editing, and also if they can't pick up your voice on their mics. So are there any questions for our artists, our wonderful artists? Delores.
I'd like to know if Nick is selling a video or something of his program. I'd love to hear the whole thing.
The question was, is Nick selling a video or something of his program? She'd love to see the whole thing. The CD-ROM.
Are you talking about the presentation that you just given?
I want to see the whole thing,
the exhibition?
not just the bits and pieces that you took out.
I've got a catalog with some of the work and
Oh, wonderful.
imagery
Is it
available.
for sale?
Yeah, I don't have too many on hand right now, but
Keep one for me.
$50, right? All of the video work's available on my website. So that's the beautiful thing about internet today. I'll get some cards out too that has my web address, which is nicolasgalatin.com.
Easy to remember. Mike?
I thought the presentation of Tanis's resources of what has been developed in our land, whether it's up north or here, but the symbolism of the Tina. When she said she wanted to show it red, you know, the ridges on it has been explained to me is the backbone of our grandparents. And what a story and what a show presentation. That just, as an environmental person, when we walk on this earth that our grandparents did and their grandparents. You get to see Mr. Galatin's paperwork. It touched me in a way that probably my wife would probably question him about it, because she loves to make paperwork and taking thousands of sheets. She'd probably kind of chuckle, but I'm going to tell her about that. And I got to get one of those catalogs. But on Evelyn's upside down ghost face, the way it was told to me by my grandfather, he said it was very, very careful when it was spread out, just like you saw this morning with David Katsik's regalia. That I also heard it from Tanis's mother, Maria, when we went to visit her in Haines, about that face, about the obligation when you put it on. And especially if you traveled to another town and you turned your back to the people you were talking to or to the person, because the Nakanis would be wearing it to the special people that they were inviting to a potluck. They didn't say it verbally, but it was one of those things that was implied when they turned. But the obligation part, I thought that you were going to expand upon it. Do you want to say some more about it?
Beautifully articulated. Media people, did you pick that up? There's no way I'm going to be able to repeat that. Who would like to respond to Mike Jackson? Oh, Clarissa.
Because it's exactly, it's exciting because that's, it confirms what I heard. It's exactly, when you were talking about the ghost, the upside down ghost faces and putting them upright. But a lot of people have wondered why they were upside down, and it's the same thing. I heard it from your mom, and I heard it from Jenny Flanant, that when the face was upside down on a tunic, if the person turned to whomever, it was an unspoken invitation to the next potlatch or whatever, just like what you said. And I haven't heard anybody else say that, so I got all excited when you said it. And also, in regards to weaving, when we have our weaving on a robe, like on a loom, the other thing I got excited about was when you made reference to how emotional it is after spending a year or 2.5 years on doing a chilcat or raven's tail weaving. Anytime you take your weaving off the loom, it's like, there's a whole, it's good to have ceremony and ritual around it because there's all this emotional attachment. And like we say, it's like it's like taking care of a child, having a baby, like this little infant up here. and you want to protect it, you want to take care of it. And, you know, when you take it off the loom, it really is an emotional thing. So one day, it was the last robe that I did. It was just last May. I took my Copperman robe off the loom. No, there's a Haber robe. That was 4 or 5 years ago. Golly, these years are going by real fast. And anyways, I said to myself, oh my God, how am I gonna handle this? This is ridiculous to continue doing this for the rest of my life. You know, getting emotional over, you know, taking the robe off the loom. I says, I need some help here. Tell me what it is. And the answer was, cover your loom with your weaver's cloth. Immediately cover it right after you take it off. And then it's just like you still have a robe on there. It's just invisible. It's the next robe. Oh my God, what freedom. So I just wanted to give that as a hint to the two of you here as weavers of robes, and any of you who are planning on, you know, taking up chilkat or raven's tail weaving. And when you do a robe, it's a very powerful experience, and I know that Chloe someday will do that. And anyway, that's a real big trick of the trade. Thank you.
Thank you, Clarissa. Responses from the artist?
Well, I appreciate your comment about my installation, and it was a very emotional piece to create. And one of my goals was to make sure that with this piece that I targeted the audience that is Tlingit rather than non-native audience. And at this point, I felt like it was really important to speak about issues that are really important, to use symbols that are really important, that are recognized. So instead of trying to educate or reach a non-native audience, it was important for me to use symbols that Tlingits could recognize. And the best compliment that I got from that exhibition at the Sacred Circle Gallery was from an elder Tlingit who came up to me and he shook my hand real hard and he says, I know what this is. These are our ancestors. And then he walked away. So, thank you.
Any other questions from the audience?
I don't have a question, but I have a hope, I guess, and that is, I wonder if Tanis or if the person who organized the session could ask Steve if maybe you could get her video going and possibly we can see it sometime in the next couple days. Yes.
Yeah, the request was, could we get Tanis's video going and maybe see it in the next couple of days? She has a DVD. Do you think we can? For those that would like to stay, we could probably do it. See? Any other questions while she's getting set up?
Just this.
Mike?
I thought my computer got a virus in it when I got onto Mr. Galatin's site. I thought the gumboots that was stuck on the rock by the spiritual man, I thought I ate those, but I'm gonna get it back and record it and then slow it down and then have probably thousands of pictures to look at all year long.
That was an older site design with that last video I played for you guys, right when he visited the homepage. That's kind of what you saw. It's since changed.
I apologize to the media people. I'm having a hard time reiterating. Is your mic picking? Yeah, Mike's voice is good and strong. Any other questions? Feel free to leave if you have to. We are going to show Tanis's video by request. 3.5 minutes. 3.5 minutes.
thank you for staying and seeing that. It seemed like a long 3.5 minutes. Anybody have any questions? Are they what?
Are they getting it, you have to explain something else, explain something?
Well, a lot of, she asked if when I'm doing installations for non-native audiences, do I have to explain? Yes, I do. And a lot of times what's interesting is that they really need to see a written statement. And so I have to work real hard. I have to force myself to do that. And so what helps is to be there with the art. But a lot of times they don't understand. So it's nice to have my work at home.
I don't know when we're going to be able to do it, but the Museum of the North is going to install one of Patterson's installations when we can fit it into our schedule. We've already begun talking about that. Yes. So you will see something in Fairbanks sometime.
For the media people, Aldona Janitas said that the Museum of the North will be installing one of Tanis's pieces when they can. Well, I think we'll end on that note, that happy note. Again, I appreciate all of you staying and attending today. And let's give one last big hand for our